1 week away from the summer solstice, in the middle of election year, midterm election year, with probably higher stakes than any midterm in my lifetime because Donald Trump is and the MAGA movement are attempting to eviscerate American democracy. Certainly try to put a stake through its heart by November 3rd, and we need to fight to maintain our democracy. And we at PDA, of course, understand that to mean during primary season, we have to try to lift up as many progressives as possible to victory in Democratic primaries across the country, in particular in federal elections, with the focus of Progressive Democrats of America as a federal PAC. And today we have two fantastic congressional candidates that will be featured. In the top of the second hour, we're going to be joined by a person who's got a history with actually PDA going back a number of years. And that is Robin Wilt, who is running for Congress in New York's 25th district. The primary is on June 23rd, so 9 days from now. And she is challenging longtime moderate, I prefer to say conservative Democratic incumbent Morelle in New York 25. And that's Joe Morelle. And he's been there for a long time in sort of Metro Rochester area, an upper New York State Democratic incumbent. And Robin Wilt will be with us at the top of the second hour. And our featured guest in the first hour, well, we will actually have a little drop-in appearance from Brian Varela, who you may recall as a candidate running for Congress in New Jersey. Brian did well as a first-time candidate in the district and built a nice movement around his campaign. And he's going to be coming on to just talk about what his plans are, having failed to win that primary, but really feeling compelled to help motivate the progressive movement. So he'll be joining us for a few minutes. And then we'll have Lily Greenberg Call, a friend to Progressive Democrats of America, and person who's, I believe, on the steering committee of Young Progressive Democrats of America. And she is renowned as being the first Jewish American to resign in protest from the Biden administration. She was working under Deb Haaland at the Ministry of the Interior. Ministry is not the right word in America, Department of the Interior. And she will be with us to introduce her friend, Alexis Goldstein, who's an amazing congressional candidate running in Maryland's 6th district. And I really lean into that. She's running in a very crazy race in that she's actually facing two incumbents. That's a strange thing, but a reality. David Trone and the current incumbent, who is April McLean Delaney. Delaney is partners with, I believe, a former governor of Maryland, and they're sort of a very powerful political family in Maryland. And then David Trone is himself a very, very wealthy businessman who held the seat up until 3 years ago, I believe it was, or even more recently. And then Delaney won when he stepped aside to run for Senate in a failed campaign to win the primary, failed to win the primary, but he stepped down, and now he's coming back to reclaim his seat. And they're both much more conservative Democrats than Alexis Goldstein, and she is trying to claim and ride the progressive path in Maryland's 6th district to victory. And Alexis has a really very interesting backstory as a public intellectual, and as somebody who had a very unique and disturbing experience in the federal government and an encounter with Doge, which we actually had her on our town hall previously to talk about that experience. So those will be our featured guests. And there's so much going on in the world, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. We're going to hear from, of course, Mike Fox with our PDA to-dos for this week. And I believe if Donna Smith is with us or not, we'll hear from Donna on her thoughts on the state of the world right now. And I certainly have many thoughts on the state of the world and many ideas to share with our candidates and our guests. I know you wake up and Trump is saying there's going to be a peace deal today, and the Iranians say, well, not so fast, or some kind of truce deal. Exactly what it is that Trump is saying is there's going to be, and then there isn't, and the world gets drawn into it. And, at the same time, we have this crazy situation where Elon Musk, through really bullying markets and market practices, was able to declare himself the first ever trillionaire, which is nauseating. both because it's Elon Musk and the very fact that there is somebody who's accrued $1 trillion. I did the math a while ago to figure out that if you made $15 an hour, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, how long it would take to accrue $1 billion. And that was 33,333 years. Just if you had no expenses and you were just collecting the money, that's how long it takes to get to a billion. So someone can do the math on how long it takes to get to a trillion. It's in the vicinity. And of course, he's a huckster. Obviously, he's got some kind of managerial engineering skills, but I'm sure there are tens of thousands of engineering managers across the world who have comparable skills to Elon Musk, and they just can't sell you false lines as readily as he's willing to and that he can do. Maybe there's more skill there. I don't know. He seems atrocious. Reminds me of the John Lennon line about, and you can be like the folks on the hill, but first you must learn how to smile as you kill. And that strikes me as what's going on with these oligarchs in Silicon Valley. So, the other things, of course, that are going on is the world is arriving in the United States, Mexico, and Canada for the world's largest shared spectacle that humanity participates in. I sometimes say other than the United States presidential election, but who knows how many more of those there'll be. So the World Cup is happening in Mexico and Canada quite gloriously. It's considerably more fraught in the United States, where foreign players are not being welcomed into the country. They're being searched and disgraced at where they try to enter the country if they come from certain countries. They're not allowing a Somalian referee into the country. And yet, the stadiums seem full. The USA men's team played very well. But, it doesn't mean that the United States should, if Russia, and I'm never a Russian apologist, if Russia's not allowed to participate for invading Ukraine, I'm not quite sure why the United States is allowed to host a tournament when they're at war, a war they started with one of the competitive countries. And now that competitive country has to practice in Mexico, so they're not allowed to practice here, though they'll be playing a game here in Los Angeles in a few days. So there's a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot for us as progressives to do. And we've had a really strong and solid season in terms of progressive results. And we had more, of course, this past week with, obviously with Graham Plattner winning in Maine, and then be interesting to see the result in Oklahoma's 5th district on Tuesday, and then on to the primaries the following Tuesday in, among other states, Maryland and New York, where we have many PDA endorsed candidates. So, Mike Fox, you want to step up and do our PDA to-dos, unless we have either Mr. Varela here, Brian Varela, or Donna Smith, and I see neither. So why don't you take it away with our PDA to-dos for this week?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes, the buttons weren't being friendly. And oh goodness, I don't have light on me. There we go. All right, gang, to-do number one, as always, what? Revel in the fact that you're surrounded by people who get it every single Sunday, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific. We are here showing solidarity with each other, getting pumped up for the upcoming week of work. So I want to thank you all for being here. You make me healthier just by being here and sharing this community with us, and I appreciate. And for those who don't know, no, I'm not ICE. It's a long story, doctor's orders, and I know it's off-putting, and I apologize for it. But in any event, with work in mind, to-do number 2, take notes. We're going to be coming at you with a lot of stuff here, and we're hoping that you'll pile on in a big way over the upcoming week. So we need to know what we need to get done over the upcoming week to help these candidates out. So please do take notes. Now, from a time and treasure standpoint, time number 1, phone bank, phone bank, phone bank, phone bank. Did I mention phone bank? We've got to have the phones on fire for the elections upcoming. We got a boatload of endorsed candidates. All of them deserve our support. And so we got to have the phones on fire. We got quite a few phone bankers in the room right now. Go ahead and type in the chat, phone bankers, identify yourself as one so we can throw some love at you. And number two, ask folks to help at pdamerica.org/volunteer. Our goal for this call is 10 new phone bankers. We got a bunch of our standard folk here as always. But 10 new folks. If you haven't picked up a phone with us, all we're looking for is 1 hour. That's it. It's a piece of cake. We just got to get it cranking. So let's get to those 10 new signups today. Number two, treasure. Our goal for the day, let me back up. First and foremost, we're very proud at PDA that the vast majority of our work gets done by volunteers. That's just our core ethos here at PDA. It's citizens taking their civic responsibility seriously, right? And thank you all for everyone who's been volunteering to bring the votes in. However, we still got to keep the lights on, as it were. So the best way for us to do that is with sustaining donations, because that gives us a budget right there. We know what's coming in, we know what can be spent, and that also limits the amount of times that Fox has to start screaming, hey, we need money, we need money, we need money, and nobody wants to listen to that, right? So if you can just toss in a buck, 5, 10, do more if you can per month. It's a beautiful thing. And we're looking for solidarity on this call. If all you can give today is just $1, fine, no worries. It's a beautiful thing. If you can do more than that, wonderful. The first donation of $100 or more, I will personally match. But if you can't do that, that's fine. If you can just do $2 a month, that's a beautiful thing. At the end of the day, this is about solidarity, first and foremost, more than about big amount of money raised. Okay. So we'll be back at the top of the hour with where we're at on those goals. And back to you, Alan. And let me see if I can get some folks co-hosted here.
Sure. And has Brian Varela arrived or Donna Smith? We would love to hear from Mr. Varela and Ms. Smith. Donna, of course, being the chair of our advisory board. And I saw some people in the chat commenting on our endorsement process. It is a grassroots up process, and we send out questionnaires, and people fill them out, and then we do not support unless we have support within the district for a candidate, and that sometimes blocks us from endorsing people we want to endorse. But that's the way we proceed here, and it does create occasionally some tricky situations for us, but we want to maintain our status as supporting the grassroots out across districts.
Alan, neither Donna or Mr. Varela have joined us yet.
Okay, great. Well, one person who is here is my friend Lily Greenberg Call, and Lily is with us, and she can turn on her video as a co-host. And let's also make sure that Alexis has arrived. I know that Alexis is planning on being here certainly right around now. And Lily, how are you doing? Hey, Lily. I'm going to turn my video on too. Hi
I'm
there.
good. I'm good. It's nice to see everyone. Well,
Yes.
everyone's names at least.
Yeah,
There's a
everyone's
lot of
names.
folks on the call.
There are indeed.
Nice to
How
see
you
you.
been? What's your take on this crazy world at this point? Are you hopeful seeing? I mean, boy, Zohran Mamdani is more popular now when his election, even than when his election was met with euphoria in New York City, and it's
Yeah, I
spread
mean, I
all
think
across
it
the country.
helps, to have a legendary win like last night. As the daughter of a New Yorker and my partner is a New Yorker, and I feel just as an American Jew, a little bit of an honorary New Yorker myself. I think that's allowed. So I've been rooting for the Knicks this season. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that for so long, so many folks, especially young people, like myself, have seen politicians and the entire system and basically everyone that we have felt, was in charge of our well-being disappoint us in some way. And whether that was like the fault of individual people or just like a very broken system that we've inherited, we've been constantly told to like temper our expectations, and we have been told that things that we see happening in other countries, frankly, that are significantly less wealthy and sometimes like, not even as well run as the United States, or have, places that have less resources, being able to provide a quality of life for people that we do not have here. And like, frankly, my generation, I think anyone under maybe 40, I'm not sure where the cutoff is, but like we are the first generation in a long time to guaranteed that it is guaranteed we will have a lower quality of life than our parents,
Well,
or at least access to certain
but
opportunities. And
not if our political movement gets power and Alexis Goldstein
right.
gets
Well,
to
so what I was going to
it.
say is
Yeah.
that Zoran has kind of showed that it doesn't have to be so hard
Mhm.
to do things that improve people's lives when that is your mandate, and when
Mhm.
that is what you go into government to do. And we're seeing, like you mentioned, all these primaries across the country in Michigan and California, and folks who are taking on the political machine, folks who are willing to speak truth to power and willing to speak to the reality of this moment, and they're winning their primaries or they're coming really, really close. Um, and I think, the opposition is very well funded and very well organized, and they are pouring millions of dollars, into maintaining the status quo. But I am so much more hopeful than I was a year ago. And I think like just the energy of these primaries, the energy of this organizing happening across the country, not just in races that everyone knows about, the endorsement infrastructure working together. I mean, the fact that there's 200 people on a call on a Sunday, um, we're not just like in the streets, right? We are actually figuring out how to build power in a real way and changing what is politically possible. So I'm so excited that Alexis is here because she is someone who is doing just that.
But we're gonna pause for a second, and I'm gonna say just one thing quick, which is one of the paradoxes of now the World Cup, which will even for New Yorkers may take center stage in the sports world, is it's co-hosted by Mexico and Canada. Mexico has a pretty cool president right now, and Canada, okay, Carney, he's okay, he's anti-Trump, is very eloquent about it. But the head of the NDP, if people don't know, Avi Lewis, is gaining in the polls. That's the left-wing party. He's the life partner of Naomi Klein.
Yes, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
and it's sort of exciting. It's a
It's
good
really,
thing.
yeah, I remember reading her book Doppelganger a few years ago, and she was writing about his first run, and to see that, the political conditions were not ready for him at that point, but I think, the weather's changed. So,
That's a beautiful thing. And thank you for your insights. It's always great to have you here. If we can hold for a second, the candidate from, I believe, New Jersey 7th, who we endorsed, has joined us. And just for a few minutes, he wanted to just offer his thoughts on how he's going to continue to work to support the progressive movement following his candidacy. And I saw he just arrived. So, Brian Varela, if you have been co-hosted, please unmute. Please turn on your camera and you'll join Alexis Goldstein, a fantastic candidate where Lily is about to introduce in Maryland 6th, and Lily Greenberg Call, just a great activist who is outspoken on a tremendous range of subjects. And Brian, are you with us?
I am here. I am here. Hey, Alan.
Hey, Brian, how you doing? And congratulations on running a fantastic campaign.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I'm doing pretty well. We actually just got back from Peru. We took some time off after the campaign. Win or lose, it was scheduled because we were going to need it. And back in action, and really happy to be on.
Well, I understand you had some thoughts you wanted to share with us about what your
Yeah.
plans are going forward. And I'll end with, again, saying that if Columbia gets to the final in New York, I hope you can get a ticket and all that jazz.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, look, I think first of all, I was honored to have gotten the support from this amazing organization,
Thank you.
and things didn't turn out the way that I had hoped. But the truth is that this is much larger than just one candidate, than one campaign, than one race.
Mhm.
We've got an administration that has enriched itself to the tunes of billions of dollars, his family members at least. We've got a president who tried to set up his own little slush fund to pay off his buddies and friends.
Mhm.
Um, so I say all that because I think most of us on this call would realize that the country is in trouble. And I think that the campaign that I ran was very much about the mission. And once the votes are counted and they don't fall in your favor, it doesn't mean we cross our hands and take our ball and go home, right?
Mhm.
We continue the fight, but we continue in a different way. And I think that while my primary may be over, there's been a lot of great candidates that are here on this call, actually, right? That have been endorsed by PDA, and I think that it's a matter of dusting yourself off and getting yourself up off the floor and keeping on going, right? Because
Mhm.
you're never going to win a fight if you don't get back up after you're pushed the first, second, third, fourth, fifth time, right? You've got to keep bouncing back. And I've personally made that a commitment for myself, right? I was very clear the day after I lost. I came out very strongly in support of the primary winner. And while her and I are not necessarily 100% aligned, she is
Right.
infinitely better than the Republican incumbent. And we're going to need her in the House to get that majority to get the country back on track. And so I may not be fighting as a candidate, but I'm still going to continue the fight, whether it's organizing, whether it's leveraging my own supporters and my own following to make sure that we're all aiming in the same direction. I mean, ultimately, there's a lot of great candidates, right? Like Alexis, I had the chance to read up about you a little bit earlier, right? And I think that there's a lot of great candidates that have been endorsed by PDA that are going to need our help. And I know that I plan on being there, right? Whether
Mm.
it's phone banking or text banking, whether it's financial support, right? Just because I lost doesn't mean that I'm gone. And I hope that what people take away from this is that your candidate might lose, right? There's only one winner per race, right? So if your candidate loses, find someone else to support, right? Maybe it's you live in a district that's a very competitive district, right? And you still need to win in the general. And maybe your candidate didn't win, but you still care enough about your specific district to get involved there, right? There are tremendous candidates that are running across the country, right? That are very much aligned with our ideology and our perspective on the world. Get behind them, right? We can't, we've got to lick our wounds and be able to get back up and get back to action. And that's what I'm doing. That's what I've been planning on doing. And that's what I will continue on doing. And I call on everyone on this meeting, your friends and family to make sure that we continue the fight.
I'd love to work with you going forward. And maybe once we get through the middle of the week, I'll get in touch with Mike to get in touch with you and let's keep talking because look, it is this dance we have to do right now, trying to lift progressives to victories in the primaries across the country. We've been doing really well there. In New Jersey had some good results, certainly from where it was with the change of the county line. We have a whole bunch of progressives who are running and challenging moderates. I do think the progressive agenda is the agenda the country needs right now to renew the public's faith in our society. And at the same time, as many issues as we may have with more moderate and conservative Democrats, we have to be in solidarity with them in November, and there can be no question about that. We do live in this two-party system. People complain a lot about American democracy, but we were talking about other countries, and almost no other country in the world has these open primary systems. So there is this extra layer of actual, opportunity to break in just by announcing your candidacy, like you've done, like Alexis has done, and also another thing too, we have to prepare ourselves for is there is a distinction between the progressives and the moderates. It's very real. And I think there's a difference. There's a real reason why the mainstream of the Democratic Party has such terrible poll ratings, but not progressives. We've got pretty great poll ratings. Mom Donnie's super popular right now across the whole damn country for his policies. And I think if you find yourself in a seat where you have a moderate defeating you in a primary, but you've developed, status because of running once and running a successful, challenging campaign, there might be the opportunity to run even in the next 2 year cycle. Brian, let's be in touch and please hang out. And Lily's going to introduce Alexis, and we're going to return to her candidacy. But I will be talking to you within a week. And thank you so much for showing up, man.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Brian. Yep. And that was Brian Burrell. Of course, was our PDA endorsed candidate in New Jersey 7th. Ran a great campaign and built up a lot of infrastructure of support. And now back to Lily Greenberg Hall, who is going to introduce her friend, Alexis Goldstein, running for the U.S. House of Representatives in Maryland's 6th District.
Thanks, Alan. It was so nice to hear from Brian. So Alexis is a dear friend of mine who I met when we were both inside working in the Biden administration. And we met, Alexis was at the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, the CFPB, which is one of the agencies that this Trump administration has been hell-bent on destroying. I was over at Department of Interior. We had no reason to meet in terms of our work and what we were doing in day to day, but after October 7th happened, there were, hundreds of us across government, both on the Hill and in the administration, who wanted to organize the widespread dissent that we were experiencing, and knew, pretty early on in the fall of 2023 that if anything was going to change in the status quo of what became very clear, the status quo that this administration, the past administration was like intent on maintaining, that it would have to come from people on the inside trying to change that. And of course, I think we were optimistic, that maybe a little too optimistic, that we would be able to use our skills as organizers to do that. But it was an honor to organize with Alexis and to put together Staff for Ceasefire. And I just got to know her courage and bravery and optimism and dedication for, to building a better world to come. And she is now, so she spent years as a financial policy expert at CFPB. She was worked on Wall Street, left that behind to go organize with Occupy, has really built a career out of fighting the excesses of the financial system and taking on big tech and student debt relief. And she really knows how power works and how so many people in power have made their careers off of the backs of the rest of us, and off of exploiting the little guy. And she was fired by the Trump administration for fighting back against Doge. She confronted Doge officials who were attempting to access CFPB sensitive information, the personal data of millions of Americans, and they fired her for it. And Alexis did not go home and lick her wounds. She said, "I'm going to go run for Congress" in her home district that she grew up in Maryland's 6th district, which is a district that's home to an enormous number of federal workers who have been hit hard by this administration's gutting of the public workforce. And I will let Alexis speak for herself, and introduce herself to the rest of y'all. But it's just such an honor to be in her corner.
Thank you so much, Lily. Can you all hear me?
Oh, yes.
Amazing. Well, Lily is a tremendous leader who I'm sure you all already know has inspired many, many people, including the likes of like Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! And like countless people all across the country. But I am also one of those people that is very, very inspired, was inspired and remains very inspired by Lily and Lily's bravery. I'm very grateful for the PDA endorsement. Thank you all so much for that. It's a huge boost for us. And I guess just to riff a little on what Lily said before I talk about the district, I think one of the frustrations that at least I have with the status quo Democratic Party is they don't always fight important fights that they think they can't win. And I think one of the important things about the Staffers for Ceasefire work and the resistance against the genocide in Gaza within the Biden administration was we didn't know if we were going to win. And we were like, but it's too important not to fight. And so I think coming out of the sort of 2024 election loss, I think there's this real hunger for people that are willing to do the right thing, even if you're not sure that there's victory. And that's something that I increasingly grew frustrated with when I was still at the CFPB. And we were, under attack. They tried to shut us down. A lawsuit saved us. They fired us. The lawsuit rehired us. It's been this tremendous whiplash. But the CFPB union, which is a part of the National Treasury Employees Union, and I'm still a proud retired union member of, we would go to see members of Congress, and some of them were incredibly supportive, right? Maxine Waters had us as a guest at the Democratic caucus for the House Financial Services Committee. Rashida Tlaib has been an incredible ally. I think Senator Van Hollen in particular, speaking of Maryland, has been like a really brave voice. Jamie Raskin. But then there are the people, and I won't name them, but we would go into offices and they would say things like, look, what do you want us to do? We're not in the majority. And we would say, well, our livelihood is at stake. Consumer protection is at stake. 18 different laws that the CFPB inherited after the financial crisis and CFPB was created after the financial crisis are like not being policed. I don't love that word, but not being regulated and not being enforced. And I think that people are really just looking for leaders that are fighting as hard as they are. And one of the things I see every day in Maryland's 6th district is there are all these people running toward the danger. There are people organizing ice watches. There are people organizing mutual aid drives. There are people doing grocery deliveries for folks who can't leave their house because they're afraid they're going to be snatched by ICE. And there are people who are organizing there's unfortunately a DHS warehouse in the 6th district that was purchased. It's a warehouse with 3 bathrooms. DHS has already spent $200 million on it. They want to house 1,500 people in this warehouse with no windows and no bathrooms. and no real plumbing. I mean, it's horrible. And so there's all this resistance against this. And so all over the district, people are really throwing down. And I think part of my frustration was I wasn't seeing that from my leaders. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to enter this race. Um, Lily is very kind with her introduction. I have done a lot of things in my career. It's been strange. I was in finance, I was in tech, I worked with nonprofits like Americans for Financial Reform. So that's what brought me back to the Maryland, to the DMV area in Maryland. And I learned about how Congress works and how messed up it is and how hard it is for ordinary people to communicate with their member of Congress. Whereas lobbyists have like the secret trick of like looking up the chief of staff's name and just getting their direct email, which we can all do too, by the way. But I like to joke that I've cased the joint and now I'm ready for the heist, except it's not a heist because it's our money and the billionaires stole it from us first. But I'm really motivated. When I joined Occupy Wall Street, I was very motivated to use my financial knowledge and my expertise in financial markets. And I worked in equity derivatives, and I like to do this little visual with people. Like we talk about the stock market all the time, and here's how big the stock market is, and here's how big the bond market is, and here's how big the derivatives market is, right? It's huge. And yet, Wall Street loves to keep us all ignorant of this stuff because they want to be the ones in control of it. And so I was very excited to use that knowledge during Occupy Wall Street. And I was very excited to use that knowledge in my advocacy. And it was like the thrill of a lifetime to work at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I really felt like I was starting to make amends for, my small cog role in the 2008 crisis, which was a thing that was really disgusting for me to watch. And I didn't really see the same level of disgust from my coworkers. So that was one reason that I quit. But my big thing is I feel like people who are powerful, elite billionaires who love to shame us for not already being rich, they don't think they're ever going to be held accountable. But there's one way that I do think they're afraid of being held accountable, and that's taking their money away. And so that's sort of my main focus, is I think we need to move the funding away from the surveillance dragnet, violence and war, this reckless war in Iran, giving it to Peter Thiel and Palantir, and let's reshift it to the care economy like we did in the Great Society, like we did in the New Deal, but like let's do it more fairly and more equitably this time. So I'm running in Maryland's 6th congressional district against two Democratic incumbents. If that sounds weird, it is weird. One of them is the current incumbent, and one of them was previously the representative. David Trone is a billionaire. His business is worth about $6 billion. And then April McLean Delaney is like 100 millionaire. So I saw the link come up in the chat. We could really use your support. We're not trying to outraise them, but we are trying to do a big, GOTV push and just get our name pushed out. And when people hear about the campaign, they're really excited. It's just hard when you're going against two people that are so very well known. So, like $5 goes a really long way for us. And we have a lot of excitement, and we're going to see what happens. Hopefully the two very, very wealthy people split the vote and we sneak in the third lane.
Um, I'm gonna ask a question, then Lily, maybe if you want to have a follow-up question, but I actually mine's going to be very much a leading question. I think it's very good to have humility and be humble and everything, but I don't think it can be overstated that if you really look where power is concentrated in American society, it is in the hands of the wealthy and the wealthiest investors, some institutional, but also now individual, especially as individual fortunes have just become astronomically huge, passing $1 trillion now. And we have a situation in which, very generally speaking, if you make $1 million a week, you probably can't spend that much of that in any given week. And what your financial advisors will have you do is reinvest it. This is creating a dynamic where everything that Americans rely upon are being owned essentially by fewer and fewer people. And I don't think that there are that many people, even in Congress and their staffers, who have as clear an understanding of this as you do, Alexis. And not only that, I think of the elected officials, if you were to win in Congress, you would enter Congress with this background, much like Elizabeth Warren entered into the Senate when she did and was understood to be not just an advocate for working people, but somebody who really understood how financial wealth was organized in the society to the detriment of working people. So I actually think that you're somebody who should be really lifted up, and this campaign should be lifted up. I know it's a very tough race to win because you're going against two really wealthy incumbents, which is a very unique situation. But I hope everybody on the call, what I just said resonates with them. I mean, Americans, when they are polled, their top concern in election cycle after election cycle is the economy, just the economy. And this has especially been the case almost uniformly since 2007 and 8 when the markets crashed. The American dream never came back. Americans are really disgusted with it. And there are very few politicians, I think, who really understand the structure of the contemporary economy and therefore can really go to work on behalf of the people and provide greater understanding and make this more central to American political discourse. So I just want to say that. Just your thoughts on everything I said, and don't. I wouldn't be shy about your background as a dissenting person who left. I mean, you worked at the most renowned investment bank in the world, and my understanding is you left in basically in solidarity with Occupy Wall Street. Maybe tell people that story too. And then you became a very prominent commentator. I mean, unique among the people who were active in Occupy Wall Street in a way that was a little bit more conventional than, say, David Graeber. You really could explain these things to people, and you did a brilliant job of it in the wake of that, I thought.
Well, thank you, Alan. I'm grateful for the knowledge that I was able to acquire, and I try to pass it on to others. I do think that there's a lot of sort of black holes in our knowledge. One of the things
Mhm.
that I've talked about in a New York Times op-ed that I wrote in 2021. So we talk a lot about taxing the rich, and obviously we should do that. But there are sort of three ways that wealthy people exercise power, right? It's like through tax evasion, it's through not following the rules that the rest of us follow, and it's through political influence. And I think we're pretty good at the last and the first, and maybe we have a little bit less knowledge of the middle one. So just to talk about the middle one for a second.
Mhm.
So people have probably heard about private equity. They're taking over hospitals. They're taking over lots of public goods. If you put all of their assets together, private equity has $4 trillion in assets. But the personal investment funds of the Elon Musks of the world, so his private investment office, it's called a family office. It's so cute sounding, right? But if you add up his personal investment office and Jeff Bezos and all the rest, there's $6 trillion dollars. And we have no idea what they're doing with that money. Private equity is required to tell the government on, a sort of a quarterly basis, here's what we're investing in. There's $6 trillion dollars in assets that we have no idea where it is. And now that Elon Musk is a, 1 point whatever trillionaire, like I'm sure that number is very out of date. And so I sort of like to joke, but it's not really a joke, that I have a 3 point plan, which is find the billionaire money, take the billionaire money, and give the billionaire money back to the people.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so part of finding the billionaire money is taxation, but part of it is also knowing what they're investing in so that we can make sure they're not evading taxes. Because part of the reason they're able to evade taxes so easily is, they put their money in corporate entities, they put them in these
right.
family offices that doesn't have to tell the government where their money lives. And so they're able to evade, whatever tax rules we come up with. So one of the things I did in 2021 before I joined the CFPB is I worked with AOC's office on a bill to do this. And so the bill text is written. It passed through the House Financial Services Committee. It was not taken to the floor, but that's one of my major priorities if I do pull this off. And I will also say that I think there is the public really gets this stuff. If they may not get
Right,
it, like the details of it
right.
and the
They
sort of
do.
like
Hmm.
wonky
Hmm.
intricacies of it, but
Oh,
like
yeah.
I feel like people really fundamentally understand the sort of big picture in a way that Congress often doesn't. Like I feel like Congress is often the last to know about really big things. Like in the
Hmm. Hmm.
2008 crisis and the lead up to it, you had a lot of community orgs sounding the alarm, being like, whoa, there's a lot of predatory lending happening in my neighborhood. And there are a lot of Black and brown people who are being very aggressively targeted for like reverse mortgages or cash out refis. And what's going on? And, they would complain to the federal government, and the federal government was like, no, 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 like, whatever. Like, the Bush administration was like, it's fine, don't worry about it. And I feel like we're seeing this huge backlash against data centers and artificial intelligence and the billionaires sort of building all of these facilities with tax breaks that are loud, that create health impacts. I visited one, there's a bunch of them in Maryland 6th District, but one of them in Adamstown I visited, it smells. So it's not just loud, but it smells. And obviously, this is money that could be going to anything else, to libraries, to schools. And so I think the public really gets that. And it's like Congress and sort of like the business elite who are like, well, the business elite have their own reasons for not wanting to understand it, but Congress, I think, has been really slow to catch on to what the public often already knows. And I think the
Mhm.
data centers are one example of that. But I think I just want to be a part of an expanding squad and, add my little contribution to it, which is like extreme nerdy finance. But I do
Oh,
agree with you, Alan, that it is important. And one of the
mhm.
ways that, the billionaires maintain power is by hoarding the knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
Like I only know some of the stuff I know because I worked on Wall Street for 7 years. There's no reason I would have known it otherwise. And I'm really glad that I do. And I try to teach everyone around me the short version of it, at least, not the 7 year version.
Oh, thank you so much. Lily, you're up if you have a follow-up question.
I don't know that I do. I mean,
Mhm.
I'll just say like Alexis is someone who I agree with what you said, Alan, too, about not shying away from your story about like
Mhm.
being inside and then as someone who shares a similar story, right? Of like being
Sure.
both inside the pro-Israel world and then inside government and realizing what you said about your coworkers in during the 2008 financial crisis, like not being as upset about it. I mean, as much as there were a lot of people in the Biden administration who were upset about what was going on in Gaza, there were many who were either not or were not letting themselves be upset, or actively, just not seeing the writing on the wall for what it meant for the election, not you know, being incredibly arrogant about the fact that people would just, vote for Biden no matter what, and that, especially like folks in Michigan whose families were literally being bombed,
Yeah.
that they would somehow be able to, you know, not be try it was just a level of like condescension that I've never experienced in my life. And but I think that's um, so many people across the country have told me that, everyone who left the administration, it's the opposite of gaslighting, right? It like let them know that they were not crazy. And I think your story speaks to that too, of like, as you both just said, people know when they're being screwed. Um, and to have people who've been on the inside tell them, yeah, you're right, is like incredibly powerful. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why, besides that your policies that you're advocating for are incredibly popular, like you have that integrity, that is like you can't replace that.
Um, actually, in the UK right now, there's a guy named Gary Stevenson who's was a trader, a working class guy from East London who was a trader in the city and made a gajillion dollars short selling as the markets crashed from '08 to '09. So he was a trader on the desk, and
Wow.
he's become a really, really influential voice in contemporary British politics, advocating for a wealth tax and working with like an associate of Thomas Piketty, the French economist named Gabriel Zuckman, to propose, functional wealth taxes. By the way, in California, that's on the ballot in the state of
Hmm.
California in November. But the fact now that we have two gubernatorial candidates who are opposed to it, of course, right? Establishment Democrat and the Republican. We'll see what that does to the polls because so far it's been very supported. But the level of the way in which that plays in British politics and American politics on the one hand is reflective of what Lily and I and Alexis have said about how the public gets it, but it just doesn't play out in American politics. It did for a moment at Occupy, and the public seemed to get that the banks were really the villains in this and this needed to be reformed. But then it just sort of got hushed and pushed away and out to the side. But
Well, and there's one thing I forgot to mention, if I could just throw in quickly, which is so I was working at Merrill Lynch during the crisis, and we were like ready to be nationalized. Like the fear across all of Wall Street was the government is going to nationalize all of us because we messed this up so badly. And there's actually only one law policymaker who advocated for that. at the time in the Obama administration was Sheila Bair, who's actually a Republican. She's sort of a Republican that doesn't exist anymore, sort of a style,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the sort of Tim Geithners and Larry Summers, who was
Mhm.
active in the Obama administration, were like, no, that's a wild idea. We shouldn't nationalize city. And so I always think that like sometimes even the industries that are preparing to be regulated like have more imagination than Congress. And so sometimes all we really need to do is like take the ceiling off of the imagination of our elected leaders and actually things are possible. So I forgot to mention that.
I mean, I
And
actually I am curious if there is any more time for Alexis to speak for like a second about AI, because what you were just saying made me think about that, and how we've been seeing like I saw Eric Adams, who is not, really relevant anymore. I'm sure he just got a check to do this, but a bunch of even folks who are still in office, like, mainstream and more establishment electeds who have been clearly given a script about how to talk about AI, by the industry that I think, as you're saying, is like, I think they're very aware that this could totally crash and burn. What they're doing is a huge gamble. And, I think in some ways, there's some talk about how folks in AI actually do want some sort of they want the public to be actually more materially financially invested, because then it's less skin off their backs. But yeah, I'm curious your take on that, just beyond like data centers, because the reality is like we do we are no longer, I think, like we are going to be in a world that has AI no matter what, and it's just a matter of what that world looks like, and if it's, something that can maybe benefit all of us. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of it in general, but yeah, I'd love for you to talk about that for a second.
Well, I try to be data driven about everything. And so when I was looking up AI, I looked up all the securities filings that all the tech companies have to file with the SEC if they're publicly traded. And now that a bunch of more companies have gone public, I'll be able to read even more documents. But essentially, the whole AI build out is being funded by debt. And the people who are loaning money to the tech companies are like absolute financial sharks. So, just to take one example, one company, the big tech companies are smart enough to push out the cost of the data centers to other companies. So, one of those companies is called CoreWeave. That company is deeply indebted to Blackstone, which is a private equity firm, and Magnetar Capital, which is a hedge fund that happened to be at the center of the 2008 financial crisis, with the all of those sophisticated financial engineering that they did. Magnetar was in the middle of that. So this is not an entity with a good reputation. This is not an entity with a good track record. Um, there are sort of a lot of things that remind me of the sort of financial engineering leading up to 2008 with the data center build out and the AI build out. Um, but just to stress the debt point before I move away from it. So they've spent $1.4 trillion on data centers and AI infrastructure. They have earned $600 billion. So they have spent more than twice than what they've earned. This is not something people are jumping up and down to pay for. I think people were, fine to pay for to use ChatGPT for free. But part of the reason this hype cycle is so big and so outsized is they need people to believe it because they are deeply, deeply in debt, and they're not in debt to people who are not gonna collect on it. They're in debt to some very sophisticated financial players. The other thing that reminds me of the 2008 crisis is so all of the engineering, the financial engineering, at the end of the day, at the end of it was a house. And part of the argument was, look, a house will always have value. And
Right.
so it's going to be fine. That turned out to be not true because there were too many houses and, and blight and lots of other things. So the thing that they're holding up as collateral saying we promise to pay at the back of all the complicated securitization in the AI data center build out is a graphics card, like an NVIDIA graphics card. So when we talk about AI data centers, these are buildings full of graphics cards that are being run at very intense speeds to do the large language models and like, pop out the Pikachu blowing bubbles at the Apple logo or whatever weird art you're doing with AI or coming, scanning the brief or whatever it is. It's very intensive and they use graphics cards to do it. They used to use these to mine crypto and now they're using it for AI. So that's the collateral. Those things age like milk. They go bad after like 2 years. They either burn up and stop working, or they become obsolete and you have to buy another one. So we have $1.4 trillion in these weird debt structures that big tech and their buddies have borrowed all this money and they're backing it up with a graphics card. This is the thing that keeps me up at night. Like, this is a
Mm,
financial crisis waiting to happen. And I
mm,
think what Lily said is really important. They want us all to be invested in it so that they're too big to fail. And the more
mm,
we're all invested in it and bought into it, and the more big companies are invested in it, the bigger to fail they are. And even last year, OpenAI's chief financial officer said, "Oh, AI is so important. We need to have a government backstop,
mhm,
aka the government needs to bail us out if anything goes wrong." And there was a lot of controversy, and she wrote it. She walked that statement back, but she 100% meant it, and they are 100% planning for that. And so one of the things that I think is important for our leaders to do is put conditions on a bailout, because they're going to ask for one. And so what are we going to extract when they do? But I think this whole AI thing, it reminds me of crypto. One of the things I did at CFPB is I worked to fight crypto scams, and we were getting a lot of promises from the crypto industry. Future of finance, blockchain is magic. You'll be able to transact all over the world instantaneously. None of it was true. It was all hype. But it's like the early internet. You got to wait for it to like figure itself out. And that's sort of what we hear with AI. And I guess I should just say I'm a computer science uh, my Bachelor of Science is in computer science. I am a tech person. I think programming is fantastic, and I love programming and I love tech, but AI is more of a marketing term,
Hmm.
and
mhm,
people call whatever they want AI. And the only thing that's new about what we call AI, because 20 years ago we had this same kind of technology, is we have these five monopolistic companies that have all of our data. Facebook, Google, Microsoft. And because they have that much data, they can run these algorithms on that data to come up with a predictable answer that sounds like it's something you might say, right? Like it sounds like, they just have more information to chew through, but that's why it's so climate intensive. That's why it's so electricity intensive. And why do they have all this data in the first place, right? Like, when did we consent to them taking all of our data? And
mhm.
so it's a really scary setup, but I think that people are waking up to it, and hopefully our leaders will wake up to it pretty soon too.
Or we will just have to elect people who are not bought by the AI lobby.
Oh, oh, so I should say right now in the chat, you can find a way to donate to Alexis's campaign and to volunteer for her campaign through PDA. And I encourage everybody to click on those links and to donate. I'm going to do so. So I encourage everybody to join me in doing so. And uh, um, um, I mean, didn't Musk just now with the $1 trillion that he just made for himself, he finessed Wall Street regulators to allow large what are they the large funds that are from retirement funds, et cetera, to be allowed to go into an IPO, whereas that generally they were protected from that and they were discouraged from doing it. But he just basically has so much leverage over the entire regulatory arrangements during the Trump years that he was able to get this bent. So basically, now when his stock valuation at SpaceX plummets, which I think is probably inevitable, a lot of people's retirement funds will be harmed by it. Now, those are hedged to a great degree, so it won't be one company won't take them all down, but it'll be harmful
Well, and
to
if
people.
I may, this is sort of where my like
Mhm,
wanting to restructure the economy bit comes in. Like, let's go
mhm,
back to the Great Society. Let's go back to the New Deal. Like, it's a relatively new thing that we run everything through Wall Street. Like, it sort of started around Nixon and accelerated with Reagan and Bill Clinton and all of that. But we used to make large-scale public investments in things. Like,
mhm,
we used to pay artists to make art. That was
mhm.
a thing the
Right,
government
Imagine
did.
that.
right.
Um, and pay people to build buildings and pay people to build bridges. And
Right.
instead, we were like, oh, well, what if we let the private market do everything? We'll give the money via tax breaks to the private market, and then it will trickle down, right? And I think we all know how poorly that worked. But part of going back and part of like rebalancing this and taking the money away from the billionaires is obviously regulating them, obviously taxing them, but it's also like, let's take away all of these monetary benefits that they're getting. Let's restructure the way our economy works, and let's have the government start building things again. Let's have
Mhm.
the
Right.
government start paying
Right.
artists again. Let's have the government, I don't know, build a rec center in your neighborhood or build 1,000 libraries in 10 years. Like Andrew Carnegie did that. But what if the
Right.
government did it?
I can't help myself but to chime in and say that in our health insurance system, 18% of GDP is spent on healthcare here. The only countries in the world that are above 10%, other than the United States, are Germany and Switzerland at 10 and 11, respectively. So Italy, France, the
Wow.
Scandinavian countries, the UK, all are 9% of the GDP or less. We pay for half of the cost of the national health care, the GDP that's 18%, through government taxes we pay to the government. So the government pays for that. In other words, we're paying for what should be our full healthcare system already through taxes. It shouldn't cost us a cent more. And that extra 9% on top of the 9% that we've paid in taxes to cover those costs are basically direct payments to 100% parasitic institutions, which are private institutions, because they're not necessary. And the American people fall for this because they bought into the logic of privatization. Private companies are more efficient.
Well, and I
Hmm.
think it's harder to see it with something as big as healthcare, but it's really easy to see it with something like your tax returns. Like
Sure.
in the Biden administration, the IRS created a free tax tool called Direct File because
Mhm.
why should you have to do your taxes at all? The government knows what you owe in taxes.
Yeah,
What if
they
the
do.
government was just like, this is how much you owe? And so the Biden administration built that. This woman named Marie C. Vinton was one of
Wow.
the leaders of it. And then they rolled it back during the Trump administration to give TurboTax and H&R Block and whoever else money, right? So everything you're
Hmm.
saying, Alan, 100% with healthcare, but we do it over and over and over again, including in small ways.
Yeah, there we go. Well, hey, look, we're first of all, I just got to reiterate again because we're pretty much at the time where we're going to be joined soon by our other featured endorsed candidate on our call today, which is Robin Wilt up in New York's 25th. And I promised Mike Fox that we'd wrap by the top of the hour, then go to Robin. And so we only have a few minutes left. And I would have loved to have taken questions, but I just think your work is and your knowledge. I hope that everybody in the audience, everybody stayed. The participant numbers has only gone up over the course of the hour. Everybody is just riveted by everything you're saying. People can see the unique knowledge that Alexis has. We haven't heard this angle on American society and politics from basically any other congressional candidate that we've spoken to. Obviously, there are people in Congress like Elizabeth Warren, Ro Khanna, et cetera, have good knowledge of financial systems. But the essential addition that you would represent to the U.S. House of Representatives, I cannot overstate it. And so I
Hmm.
really encourage every single person on this call. And of course, Mike Hirsch might be on the call. He's our Maryland state representative. Maybe Stephen Schaff is here. People in Maryland, get the word out to the people in the sixth. This is a unique candidate and is uniquely positioned to play a leading role in the ways our economy simply needs to be reformed for the benefit, not just of American society. Look, I think American society is in the throes of a crisis that will not be resolved until somehow the American dream is once again achievable for average households. That the
Yes.
public, that we were simply too prosperous for too long in the middle of the 20th century. That's People can see the suburban houses spread out across all of America. People understand what that level of prosperity was. And as they fade down and it seems unattainable, the public's just going to be angrier and angrier. And the kind of reformation of the economy you're talking about is what we need to get it back for the average household. And so, yes, let everybody know about Alexis Goldstein running for Congress in Maryland 6th. I wish I could do everything I could to help you win that primary on the 23rd. Lily, your final thoughts, and then over to Alexis for her final thoughts.
Just what Alan said. I mean, if any amount you can give to Alexis, she's got just what is it, 11 days? 9 days? Okay. So if you're in the area, you should go sign up and knock doors for her. But yeah, send a donation her way and excited for whatever happens on the 23rd.
Well, thank you all so much. It's such an honor to be here. It's such an honor to have the endorsement. It's an honor to be introduced by Lily, who knows how much I love her. And I will say that we got to have fun, right? And so, yeah, I want to reshape the economy, but I want to do it to do things like build libraries and build rec centers. And in my district, there's a skate park that like has fundamentally transformed like, what people can do in Cumberland, Maryland, because now they have like a fun thing to do during the day and stay out of trouble. So, if we reshape the economy, we won't just hold these folks accountable, but we'll be able to be funding some really cool, positive stuff. And so let's have some fun out there. And thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much. And when Mike Fox reads the people who have donated, that he will be reading my name. People join me in supporting Alexis's campaign, and it'll be an honor working with you in the years going forward, as it will, of course, with Lily Greenberg Call. So thank you to both of you.
Take care, y'all.
Thank you. And thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Lily. And Mike Fox, we're going to go to you in a second, but I just got to make sure I finalize this donation here, and I'll do that. I'll pay. I hit pay with card as opposed to my usual way. You don't have to do that.
Dive headlong in, make your donation.
There, yeah, you go for it. Take it away, man, and do our PDA to dos, and then we're going to jump out to New York's 25th district. Okay?
Ivan's coming, and everybody, you're going to be just as pumped again in a second. However, I gotta say it: is she a rock star or what? I'm pumped here, gang. All right, so we gotta pile on here, and so something that always works well is when with meaning this from our heart. We're going to say thank you. Thank you so much to the following people who have donated so far. Thank you, Stephen, for your more than kind $100. And phone banker Ted, double doing. And triple doer Carl, phone banking, knocking doors, and tossing in for Alexis. Thank you, Carl, up in Wisconsin. And thank you, Jennifer, Stephen, John, Nadine, phone banker Newland, and Lori and Linda and Beth and Kurt and Chuck, who's always here. Thanks, Chuck. And phone banker Betsy, double doing, and Cheryl and Christine and Bob and Janine. Wow. Thank you, Janine, for your more than kind $250, gang. We don't have billionaires on this call. However, if you are a billionaire and you're on this call, you're a pretty special one. But thank you so much, Janine, for your more than kind $250. And gang, as a team, if anybody here can match that, I'm sure that Janine would appreciate the solidarity. Or as a team, we definitely got to make that happen. And then Valerie, thank you. Jody, thank you. Phone banker Mary, double doing. Dr. Bill, phone banker David, double doing. And phone banker Michael, double doing. And double doing Beverly. And double doing Dr. Sonneborn out in California. And double doing Aaron out in Arizona. And double doing Michael in California. And Michael S. up in Chicago. He starts us off every week like clockwork. Thank you so much, brother. And Sharon and Beth, phone banker Beverly, double doing. Oh, look, there's Michael again donating. Thank you, brother. You're double doing just from a donation standpoint. All right. We're on a roll here, gang. Let's keep this roll going. I'll get it back to Alan, but everybody stick around. After we wrap Robin, we go to family time, and we will address where we're at on our goals. That's the most important part of the call. Back to you, Alan.
I put my little thank you note in the chat because I knew I didn't get it in time for you to read my name. So there you go, folks. Come on, join me there. Thank you, everybody. Join me there. And I also wanted to throw in too, so you can see that one thing I was throwing in there about this guy Gary Stevenson. It's called at Gary Economics. If you want to see something rather spectacular about where the political discourse is around macroeconomics and finance and containing the power of finance in the UK versus the United States, just check out this guy's website and look at the views on his videos. They average around 500,000. And some of them more, some of them less. I mean, they go way higher, so average would be higher, but whatever that is, the median as opposed to the mean is about 500,000. And he's a total phenomenon in the UK, and he's speaking to many of the same things with much of the same personal background that Alexis has. And it's now become very much at the heart of the critique of the Starmer administration, as this guy, Andy Burnham, is challenging him probably for labor leadership. And Zach Polanski, the head of the Green Party, is ascending in the polls as an ally of Gary Stevenson. Polanski and Stevenson are tight. So yeah, check that out, and you can see just if it's too much sort of British politics inside talk, yeah, I understand that, but the number of people who watch them is really phenomenal. Well, thank you again, Lily. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Mike Fox. That's the link to Gary Economics. And now I am honored to introduce our next featured guest, and that is somebody running for Congress in the 25th district in New York, which is up around Greater Rochester, and that is again Robin Wilt, I believe, who has joined us already, and she is going to tell us about her candidacy. She's somebody who's been working with PDA and had an association with PDA, and because of that fact, our national chapters leader Dan O'Neill is going to actually directly introduce her to you right now. Dan, take it away.
So, hey, Alan, thank you very much. Is Robin here? Did we find her?
Yes.
Oh, we did. Okay, good.
Yes.
Wow, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Alan. Alexis and Lily, come on, give me a break. Those two rock. Yes. So I'm just excited. I'm going to do this really quick because I want to hear more from Robin, but I'm excited to introduce Robin Wilt. Like Alan said, she is New York running in New York 25 against the incumbent Joe Morella or Morelli. I'm not sure how that is pronounced. Folks, Robin is a longtime PDA member. She's one of us, solid PDA member for years. She's a community activist in the Rochester area, has been for a while. She is a former member of the Brighton Town Council or City Council, whatever it is. I am just again excited to introduce Robin. Robin, tell us a little bit about your campaign and also, as you're running in New York 25, and also a little bit about Tim Carpenter. I understand you knew Tim back in the day. If people don't know, Tim Carpenter was the founding member of PDA, one of our founding members, and first executive director. I think it's been about 12 years now since he passed. But Robin knew Tim, and anyway, go ahead, Robin. Take it away. The floor is yours. Thank you very much, everybody.
For your introduction, and
Okay,
so
thank
much
you.
again for that introduction. I want to thank Dan and Mike Fox and the entire PDA community for your endorsement and for inviting me to speak with you today. As Dan said, I am Robin Wilt, and I'm running for Congress in New York's 25th congressional district, which includes the city of Rochester and surrounding Monroe County and a sliver of Ontario County, and we're all in Western New York. So I grew up in this region and have been proud to call it home. As a first generation American, the daughter of immigrants, a 14th Amendment citizen, I am appalled by the attacks on immigrants in our country. And I'm appalled at the ongoing attacks on all of us, quite frankly. Now, at a time when our basic freedoms are under attack and the people who are charged with protecting us from this lawless administration continually fail us, I'm running because we need leadership that will meet this moment in time. I was called to this race not just because of my conviction that we need congressional leadership that will meet this moment in history, but primarily because these times are so pressing that I was actually recruited by community members as a credible challenger to the status quo, as somebody who has taken on leadership that hasn't been doing enough for this community before and won, quite frankly. My opponent has been a local party boss for 40 years. He has been complicit with this administration, voting for the Laken Riley Act, which put us on this treacherous path towards ICE's oppression. He voted for Corca, most recently, the Combating Organized Retail Crime Act, which expanded ICE surveillance latitude to unprecedented levels. And as Mike says, as Dan said, I'm sorry, I actually got my entree into politics as a grassroots organizer and activist. When my husband and I decided to move our family back to this area after college and since working in tech in Seattle, we got involved with our local Move On chapter, fighting to secure Medicare for all. Then I found out about this wonderful organization called PDA, whose slogan was healthcare, not warfare. And I decided that we would create a local chapter. And the backstory being that my brother, who is a 2002 graduate of West Point and was grievously injured in Iraq,
Mm.
he survived because he had socialized medicine. He had some of the best healthcare in the world. And I thought that everybody in this country should have access to Medicare and a single payer system. So with Tim Carpenter's leadership and support, we organized two 300 plus person town halls featuring Representative John Conyers and Mimi Kennedy, leading
Mm.
up to the passage of the ACA. I never thought that I myself would run for elected office, but when a seat opened up on our local town board, based on my activism, I was encouraged to run for that seat. And I did serve for 8 years on the Brighton Town Board. And in that capacity, I was always focused on the larger picture of human rights for all and was very much still involved in my activist pursuits outside of the town board. So while in office, I started the Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Advisory Board in Brighton. And through that body, we were able to pass the Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Action Plan and also hire the area's first full-time chief diversity officer for any town in the region. And we use those tools in order to examine our policies and programs to help ensure that we were being inclusive and equitable as we governed. Human rights continue to be my focus as I run for office now. We need universal health care. We need housing as a human right. I'm a housing justice advocate as well. We need equity in education. We need fairness in our immigration systems. As I said, I'm a first generation American, and I feel that we need to restore our social safety net and SNAP and WIC benefits. And in the richest nation in the history of the world, we have the money to do it all. And right now, as we talk about some of our human rights, our civil liberties being threatened, the discussion of the Section 2 of the VRA and the Calais decision predominates the headlines. I'm brought back to the future in a way because I took a stance in support of voting rights, particularly the voting rights of Blacks in this community just a few years ago. As recently as during the 2020 decennial census and redistricting effort, Monroe County was racially gerrymandered, with Black voters packed into some voting districts to dilute their voting influence overall through Monroe County, and conversely, Black voters split across other districts to ensure that they would be consistently outvoted by other minority voters joining in coalition with whites. And in a city that is 42% Black and a county that is 16% Black, there were only two majority Black voting districts out of 29 legislative districts that we had in the county. And to this day, Black voters, through segregationist housing policies, they remain concentrated into parts of the city that we still refer to as the Crescent. And the name has a derogatory history and origin, reminiscent of the high rate of murders and proximate violence that plague those communities. And it's a contemporary situation that really harkened back to the same Jim Crow sensibility that Dr. King fought in the South. But it's a reality to this day in Monroe County. And so reclaiming that crescent appellation for good, I joined in coalition with predominantly Black organizations, and we stood steadfast in the fight against Jim Crow era voting districts in Monroe County. Ultimately, I was one of the few local elected officials to defend the rights of African Americans under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And just by threatening to sue, we got a concession of not 5, but actually 6 majority Black voting districts out of our 29 legislative districts in Monroe County. So that was me fighting back against the system. So even though the Supreme Court had not yet struck down Section 2, because of the efforts of the Crescent Map Coalition, we have majority Black voting districts in Monroe County that will protect the Black vote now in light of the Calais decision. And that's, again, just one example of the type of courageous and compassionate commitment to serving this community that I love, that has been and will continue to be the hallmark of my service in Congress. And unfortunately, people in my district are suffering from a lack of affordability. Our housing, grocery, utilities, childcare, healthcare prices are soaring, you name it. I do fully back the Congressional Progressive Caucus's new affordability agenda and all of its claims, unlike my opponent, who is not a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Actually, he defected once they adopted a stance in support of Medicare for all. So, along with PDA, I'm endorsed by, as a citizens impeachment courage candidate. I have the endorsement of Move to Amend, New York Progressive Action Network, which is our state, but yeah, NIPAMs our statewide, our revolution iteration, and a bunch of progressive entities like that are focused on housing justice, that are focused on immigration fairness, voting rights. So, and of course, environmental rights. So, that's kind of our coalition. And like I said, I've been focused on human rights.
If I may, Robin, APAC tracker also.
Oh yes, track APAC. He's
very important, very important. Yes.
Yeah. So, as you know, that means that I do not take any corporate PAC money, nor do I take money from APAC or any of its affiliates. So, we are fighting against an opponent that APAC is his biggest donor.
Yep.
In addition to that, he accepts money very heavily from the military industrial complex, from health insurance, the insurance industry. So all of the things that we're fighting for, he is incented not to fight for because he is taking money from the opponents of those policies. So, most recently, I will tell you that I just received a slick, glossy mailer from a super PAC, an AI super PAC that is supporting my opponent. So hundreds of thousands of dollars are pouring into my race right now from an AI super PAC. And we're going to have a press conference tomorrow to make sure that we call my opponent out on this fact and see where he stands with the people or with the AI industry in terms of protecting our environment, in terms of the ethical implications of the AI industry, in terms of guarding our personal information, all of those things. But again, he's voted for Corca, so we know where he stands on that. So these are all of the areas where I believe that we have a real opportunity in 2026 because there is anti-incumbent fervor, right? We have these Democrats that are not perceived to be doing enough to fight back against this administration. And I think the general consensus is that when we take back the House in the midterms, we need to make sure that we're sending the right Democrats to the House of Representatives, the ones that will fight and not fold to this administration. Like I said, I'm a citizens impeachment courage candidate, which means that on day one in office, I will sign articles of impeachment against this rogue administration. So, I think it's time that we have representation that is going to fight this administration and preserve our human rights, as opposed to representation that's going to be complicit with the current administration. And that's why I'm running. So,
wow.
That is fantastic.
Alan, Do we have questions, Alan, or how are we going to do this?
Well, I certainly do. Am I incorrect in that there's not an insignificant like Syrian refugee community in Rochester and maybe even a Palestinian community there? Is that correct?
There is a significant Syrian and Palestinian community, refugee community in the Greater Rochester area, and I was actually targeted because as a town board member, I had the I had the audacity to stand up for Palestinian human rights.
Along those lines, Rochester, of course, is a city that rather famously, of course, was very associated with one company, right?
Yeah.
Kodak,
Kodak.
spectacularly so, which has now shut down in Rochester, which produced, for the most part, a little bit left, little left. Oh, wow. Sorry, I thought maybe it was all gone, but yeah, I don't even know what exists of Kodak anymore. Obviously, we're in the digital age and so on, but obviously a glorious company in its day and very innovative company, which everybody loved their products around the world, and they turned the world on with their Kodachrome for a long time. But this town was known to be very, very economically going through quite a rough period when with Kodak closing and everything. And what's the economic socioeconomic status of in the city in the area? Has it seen a population loss? Is there is there an economic upswing? And my understanding is the immigrant communities have made very positive contributions to Rochester in recent decades. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the University of Rochester was actually supplanted Kodak as the largest employer in the area. So we do have a very strong research base that is driven by immigration, of course. And so that's one of the factors. And right now we are seeing ICE raids in our community. And we are a sanctuary city. The city council did pass a new sanctuary law that really strengthened that non-cooperation agreement between our local law enforcement agencies and federal agencies like ICE. But unfortunately, just in one community, we saw 3 raids this week. And we have some very prominent cases where we've had people thrown into ICE detention centers who have been in this community for 30 years. And so the fact that my opponent voted for the Lake and Riley Act that really set the stage for all of this to happen, to illegalize just the process of seeking naturalization to this country, I think is very telling, and with how out of step he is with this community. Again, we have my husband just happened to donate a kidney, and he said everybody on his team was an immigrant, and being the daughter of immigrants myself, and seeing the contributions that my family made to this community, I just think it's unconscionable the way that we are treating our immigrant neighbors and relatives.
And Morelli's been an elected official from the region since 1991.
That's right.
What is the makeup of his sort of established poll machine that has him in his ossified state as a politician continue to get reelected in Rochester? And what can we do as PDA to alert people that you are, in fact, the candidate that really represents the interests of the vast majority of people in your district?
Yeah. Well, my opponent has been a party boss for the last 40 years. Like ever since he's basically come into power in Monroe County, he has been, he has been installing people in leadership in our governmental positions that are then beholden to him. Our current county executive was an aide to Joe Morelli. The current county clerk was another aide to Joe Morelli. In fact, he was just involved in a scandal because, in the immediate wake of the war, the illegal war Donald Trump started in Iran, he flew back to the district in order to appoint his preferred candidate for Irondequoit Town Board. Irondequoit is another suburb in the community, and he actually left his offices in DC to come, anoint his preferred candidate. And then when a woman had the chutzpah to say, "Hey, I'm going to run a primary against your preferred candidate," he then targeted her and he sued her, and all of her supporters who spent hours and hours gathering petition signatures to get her on the ballot. He launched a lawsuit against them to intimidate them to remove her from the ballot. So this is the type of malign policy, bullying that we see from our local party boss, who is Joe Morelli.
Yeah, and before him, you had Dorothy Louise Slaughter representing Rochester from the district until her death in 2018, beginning
Exactly.
in 1987. So you've had two Congress people in this district since 1987, both from the same machine, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
And wow. I mean, again, we really believe at PDA right now in where we are with what Tim Carpenter sparked here at PDA. And Tim really, I don't know if you were in touch with him late in his life, but my understanding from Mike Hirsch is that Tim really within PDA between Steve Cobble and Tim Carpenter, Tim really drove the idea of drafting Bernie Sanders to run for president in 2016. And PDA was the only organization in the country to attempt to do that, to launch the Run Bernie Run campaign. We ran it for 2 years by ourselves. I was just a PDA newbie at that point, but I was at the retreat in Arizona that voted on whether they would do that. I abstained because I didn't feel I really should have a vote because the other people knew best what was best for PDA. But I was there and it was voted on, and they launched the Run Bernie Run campaign in February 2013.
That's
And,
right.
and that lifted up progressive politics. We view Justice Democrats, our revolution, the growth of DSA. They're all our offspring,
Right.
at PDA.
Exactly.
And we're like the OG. So,
The OG.
yeah.
And Robin's the OG in Rochester for sure.
We're, 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 we're the Clyde Frazier to the Jalen Brunsons of the world. So.
Hey, Alan, I have a
Yeah.
question for
Nathan
Robin.
died. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Robin,
Mhm.
Juneteenth is coming up soon, and I heard or saw that you and your campaign is going to be involved in the Juneteenth events or parade or
Yeah.
whatever it is in Rochester. Could you tell everybody a little bit about that and how important that is to your campaign? Yeah.
Sure. The Black Heritage Foundation or Commission, rather, in the city of Rochester and Monroe County, do an annual Juneteenth celebration. This year, because of the partnership with the county, quite frankly, it's going to span 2 consecutive days, both Friday the 19th and Saturday the 20th. And our campaign, we will have a booth there. We will be marching in the parade. It's going to be quite an affair because this is the last weekend, of course, prior to the election. The election is on June 23rd. So it's going to be a very prominent presence for us. And historically speaking, Juneteenth in Rochester is a significant celebration. Like you mentioned, this is a city of Frederick Douglass. He delivered a 4th of July address that basically held the U.S. to account for the inequities that it inflicted upon African Americans. What is the 4th of July to a slave? Was the address that he gave right here in Rochester. So we have a long-standing history of activism in the city of Rochester. There is a Susan B. Anthony Park. She was another famous resident of the area. And there's a statue of her and Frederick Douglass having tea, which is known to have happened. And
Wow.
one of our early voting sites, in fact, is at the Susan B. Anthony House. So we have a storied history of activism and the fight for equity in this community. We just had we just had the car come through, the historic car, the yellow buyer that is involved in the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. Just a couple weeks ago, they were here on their tour because this is the center of such activism. And so, again, I will be supporting the Equal Rights Amendment, making sure it gets ratified.
Right. We fight that fight in a big way too. We
Yeah,
were very instrumental down in Virginia in lifting that over the finish line there, which of course is one of the states that propelled it
yeah,
back into
yeah, yeah.
it should
2020.
be. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you know, you bring up Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass, and of course that speech in particular. And obviously we're approaching. I mean, I remember the bicentennial of 1976, and the television airways were saturated. And the country had gone through the crisis of the Vietnam War and the Watergate and Nixon's resignation. There's no doubt the establishment wanted to use the bicentennial to sort of reaffirm, a benign and maybe somewhat whitewashed version of American history. No doubt that was the case in the bicentennial, even as it resonated with people across the country. But now it's almost invisible. I mean, this is such a terrible phase in American history that we're going through. But I think it is incumbent upon us because chances are the republic will survive. And it's the heroes like Douglas and the people who met him up in Rochester and the people he worked with the Liberator and Susan B. Anthony. And this has always been a country of struggle, and we have to just herald the people who stood for everything that was benign in this country, from Tom Paine on back down to the abolitionists to the slave revolts everywhere, man. And
Right.
that's always a part of American history too. And it's time to really renew and revive that and push back against these fascists. The right now up in Rochester, how is we have a situation where the Democratic Party gets these terrible polling numbers, and the Democrats in Congress get these polling numbers, and it's very much Morelli's formation of Democrats that is viewed that way, and yet it can be very difficult for. I mean, you did pretty well in your run in 2020. If people don't know, Robin ran in 2020, and you got a good number of votes, and for a standalone against a machine politician, you did well.
Yeah.
But we want to see you win, and it can be so hard to get the word out when there's so much noise going on in politics in the world, and Knicks championships and World Cup tournaments and
Right.
in Iran wars and suppressed Epstein files but yeah, so how's the campaign going?
The campaign is going well. We again have a lot of anti-incumbent fervor because, as you said, we do have a large Palestinian population, and Joe has really been a tool of AIPAC. He has been somebody who has refused to acknowledge the ongoing genocide in Gaza. He is somebody who thinks that ICE can be reformed. He's somebody who, again, for the first time, because he has a viable primary opponent, he finally visited the Batavia detention center that has been at the heart of so much controversy in our region, and is where one of our beloved immigrants' rights activists is being held right now, Omar Ramos Jimenez.
Mm.
And so, you know, the fact that he has been absent, not, basically asleep at the wheel. And another thing that we're facing on the local level is that the Governmental Services Administration has decided that they are going to build an ICE detention center within our federal building here, which has never held anybody overnight. And I think there are a couple of cells right now, mostly to transfer, people from one jurisdiction in custody from one jurisdiction to another. But now they plan this $5 million expansion of the federal building to include an overnight detention center for ICE, and that is very much opposed by this community. But Joe was asleep at the wheel because this was 5 years ago that the GSA basically said that they put this plan on the books. And it is only on the eve of them breaking ground that reporters with the Democratic Chronicle unearthed this plan and then drew it to the attention of our federal representatives that, hey, you know, are you on board with this? And you know, now they say they're opposed, but at the same time, where were they when this plan was hatched? Right. And this is classic, our representatives being asleep at the wheel. And Joe, by the way, he no longer houses his offices within the federal building. So he's no longer a stakeholder. He has moved to you know, a private location. So our government dollars are paying for his offices, you know, in a private location. And so he isn't even housed at the federal building.
So he's getting supported though by AI money, by the AI PACs.
Yeah.
He's getting supported by APAC. Is he getting supported by the crypto PACs? Because
I haven't seen that yet.
right.
You know, the think big dot
Yeah.
dot AI is the one that I've seen running all of his ads at this point.
I mean, you know, the AI right now, oligarchs and the data centers are hugely unpopular with the general public. And
Yeah.
you know, it's just such a crying shame because you know, obviously down in New York, and I don't know if you have a relationship with the guy, but Richie Torres is, of course, the congressperson from the crypto industry, and of course now supported also by the AI industry, and I believe APEC. And but it can be very difficult. Like Michael Blake's a honorable man, and it's so difficult to go against that level of money. But it's just got to be a way that we as progressives can all work together. And everybody on the call again, get the word out to everybody in New York's 25th district that this is the guy you shouldn't be voting for. This guy is not supporting what you support as a person out there. You know, he's supporting basically oligarchic power and wealth, a raid against the general population. It was something Alexis spoke so eloquently about earlier, you know, in the previous featured guest. But alas, I'm talking too much, and I'm fascinated by it. You're a fantastic candidate. And again, let's get into the chat, a way for people to donate to Robin's candidacy. And again, I'm going to put in money on this one too, folks. And I hope everybody can join me and also sign up to volunteer. Maryland 6 has a lot of wealth in it. It has data centers, and it's right near Washington, D.C. That's Alexis's district. Upstate New York, Rochester, you know, once one of the centers of the world and one of the centers apparently of dynamic, progressive, brilliant leaders in their time. And now a great leader is here with us from New York 25th. And let's do what we can to, pull a huge upset and upset an incumbent that is not representing the district any more than Joe Crowley was. In fact, probably less than Joe Crowley was back in 2018 when AOC defeated Joe Crowley.
Yeah, and I will say that one of the strengths of the district is that we have so much fresh water, and that resource has to be protected for the people
Oh,
of
yeah.
the 25th Congressional District. We being next to the Great Lakes, we are also have been deemed the Saudi Arabia of wind. And, you know, putting any of our freshwater source at risk is just untenable at this time. It's absolutely ridiculous. And unfortunately, our Governor Kathy Hochul, is not opposed to having AI data centers built in this region. So we need to make sure that on the federal level that we don't have somebody who is supported by big AI, which unfortunately, they put hundreds of thousands of dollars into my opponent's campaign. And they don't do that without intention, right? They're going to expect something in return. And right now on the federal level, they are looking at bills that would support preemption on the state level so that we don't get a say as a state,
Right.
into what they build here, right? So that is their plan, to make sure that they preempt the state's control over the AI data centers being built.
We have a few questions from you that are coming from the audience. Let people raise their hand now. We're only going to take a few questions as we'll run out of time in a little while. But it's true what you said. If people do not know this, the Democratic Party and moderate Democrats are on balance roughly in favor of doing the bidding of the AI industry. And they're receiving a lot of money across the country against raid against progressive candidates. And there's a paradox because there are a number of more conservative Republicans who actually are willing to stand up for AI for their own reasons, partly because there's AI districts going up in some of their districts and the public are having open revolts against them, but more often for less healthy reasons that stem from not particularly on point critique of high tech by Steve Bannon and his ilk. but they are active against it, and so this is a strange coalition where you have the left progressives. Now you have some moderate Democrats, but mainly this is a real problem. And so we got to elect progressive Democrats on this issue. That's one of the dominant issues of the moment right now. Let's go to Teddy, who has his hand raised. Your question for Robin. Please unmute, Teddy. Go for it, sir.
What are the measures that will be taken to make healthcare affordable to all income brackets?
Well, obviously, I'm a supporter of Medicare for all, but I really point to the Congressional Progressive Caucus's new affordability agenda, and that is a suite of 10 bills that will really address affordability in almost every area. And in particular, one of their first bills that they're considering is really about pharmaceutical. The affordability of pharmaceuticals, and they would actually create a government manufacturer of pharmaceuticals that would bring down the cost of some of the most commonly used drugs like epinephrine and diabetes medication, things along those lines. So that would be something that in the short term could be implemented very easily. In addition to that, there are obviously we want to make sure that we restore the ACA subsidies at very least. But again, I would push for Medicare for all the way. That is the most efficient plan. As I said, I served on the town board, and Alan, you referred earlier with the last guest, Alexis, to the fact that we are already covering a large percentage of healthcare from back into government. And out of our $32 million budget at the town level, $5 million was spent on healthcare alone. We have seen double-digit increases at the municipal level in the cost of healthcare, and that's not sustainable for us. We have had to pass that cost on to taxpayers. So when we talk about where the savings is going to come from, well, a lot of it is just the fact that we won't have to pay, our governmental entities anymore won't have to pay for those healthcare costs.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And Jane, please unmute. Jane Gruen, you're up. And a question for Robin Wilt.
Yes, future Representative Wilt.
Thank you.
How do you feel about the current composition of the Supreme Court? And and do you think that it needs reform? If so, what kinds of reform?
I do support adding additional members to the Supreme Court, but more importantly than that, I think we've seen all these battles with gerrymandering, right? It's an arms race at this point. And one of the most impactful things I think would be to raise the cap on the number of House of Representative members, right? And there are plans that have been laid to raise the cap on the House for a long time now, because what we've seen is that when they arbitrarily capped it at 435 members, it's not a constitutional mandate. This was something that was done arbitrarily in 1929 because of a particularly spicy, I guess, redistricting effort after 1920, after the 1920 census. So they said, we're not going to do this anymore. We're just going to cap the number of members. We're not going to do this reapportionment thing anymore. It's too hard. So if you compare our representative ratios to the UK, for instance, the UK has 67 million people, and their House of Commons, their lower house, and the House of Representatives, they have 650 members. So
Right.
that is one member for every 110,000 people. By contrast, our House of Representatives has one member for every 760,000 people.
Right.
So again, I would back legislation to increase the number of members of the House. It can be done, through people smarter than me have already done the calculations, and the problem, right? But what we're seeing is that we have like a state like Wyoming that has like one member for 430,000 people, and a state like New York that has one representative for every 760,000 people. So we're already seeing the concept of one person, one vote that is being skewed. So we need to address this. We need to uncap the House.
Thank you so much. And John, maybe final question before Dan has his final thoughts and Robin shares her final thoughts. John, please unmute. John, time. Good, there you go. You got it. Yep.
Well, great. I really want to congratulate you for running, Robin. We don't have enough African American people, so it's great that you're running. But a real quick comment, I'm an Army vet, and the biggest social program in the United States is the military-industrial complex. I mean, I got free housing, well, not free, I had to work for it, but I got housing, healthcare insurance, travel. The President of the United States gets a full schedule of benefits. And we're his boss, or whoever's sitting as president. So what should we all be getting? Well, I live in LA right now, and I have Section 8 housing, and everybody should be getting Section 8 housing. So that's my comment. And I think that I think we're on the right track, and I want to thank you for running again. So 30 years, 40 years of Reaganism, that's what we're still battling through. And the tide is turning. So thanks for running. And if you want to make some comments on the military industrial, I know you're a military family. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I am a Blue Star mom. My son graduated from West Point in 2021, and that is part of the reason that I fight so hard against the military industrial complex, because I do believe that our troops are a valuable resource. And they should not be deployed indiscriminately. They should not be deployed by choice of a relative dictator in the White House, and they should not be deployed out of vanity, right? We need to have, sign on. We need to expand the war powers resolution and make sure that our troops are not deployed indiscriminately. And I right now, my opponent did not sign on to Rashida Tlaib's war powers resolution that would have prevented this administration from entering Lebanon. And so again, I think that morale, just from my son, who has served for 5 years after his 4 years at West Point, morale is low because the military, out of anyone, they are more aware that they are being misused as a resource than anyone else. And, my son is stationed at Fort Drum, and at one point they were going to be deployed to the Mexican border. Posse comitatus be damned. So I think that, and thank you for your service. Again, we need to make sure that we are protecting our veterans. We need to make sure that we are protecting our active duty military. And one of the best ways that we can do that is making sure that we are not supporting war crimes being committed, against other members of the military. So.
I am, after 2 hours, of course, very tired, but have no loss of enthusiasm for Robin's candidacy. But I do, as I am getting a little worn out now and involved in trivia. And the largest state legislature in the United States, you know what state has the largest state legislature, Robin? I wonder if anybody can put it in the chat. It's a trick. Nobody will guess it unless they know it. It's New Hampshire. 400 people sit in the New Hampshire lower chamber, 24 state senators, 400 members of the assembly. And that means for a population of 1,408,518 divided by 400, that's 3,521 people have a representative. Average district has 3,521. So that's a good representation.
Yeah, our founding fathers thought the ratio should be 1 to 30,000.
Wow.
Yeah. One representative for every 30,000. And, by best estimates right now, we are shy about 150 seats in the House.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, look, it's fantastic to meet you. And look, I do hope that you will win this primary, of course, and we'll do whatever we can to have that be the case. And let's stay in touch either way, of course, and work together either way. We so would love to have you in Congress, and I think you would do a brilliant job of representing the people in New York's 25th district. Dan O'Neill, I promised you a final word.
I just want to thank you, Alan, and thank you, Robin, for being with us, for running. I want to thank all of the people in the here who have stuck out in the second hour to listen to Robin, because it has been amazing. Look, folks, go to the chat and donate to Robin's campaign, and find a way to get on her phone bank. Is there a link in there where we link to your phone bank, or to your at least your website, so they know how they can get more involved? And again, thank you, and thank you for bringing in PDA and Tim and that little history lesson there from all the OGs back in the day. Anyway, thank you. Yep.
Yeah. So hopefully we have a link somewhere. I just put it in the chat, but please do go to robinforus.com. And if you want a phone bank, you can go to robinforus.com/get-involved. So just go to the page and you can find out how to help out. We have virtual phone banks going. We have postcarding going if you're local. We have lit drops going. So right now it's all hands on deck. Early voting started yesterday, June 13th, and it ends on June 21st, and then the primary, of course, is June 23rd. Again, I can't thank PDA enough for endorsing me and for your support through all of this. This organization has a special place in my heart, of course, and so the endorsement means all the more. Healthcare, not warfare.
There we go. Hey, thank you so much. It's an honor to meet you. And yes, everybody, let's get behind the campaign. Support Robin. Victory on the 23rd. Ballots already out and they're being voted on. So let's get the word out as best we can across the district. Thank you so much for joining us on the town hall, Robin.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, wow. What two incredible candidates we were able to feature today. And, both of them merit just as much support as we can provide. And let everybody know in those two districts, right? Maryland 6th for Alexis Goldstein. And really, what? So much better. So much better will the representation be for the citizens of those districts, but from Alexis and then from Robin. And I'd got to say, really, really, really impressed with Robin and her sense of commitment to the community and an awareness of, the power dynamics that inform the maintenance of a sort of sclerotic Democratic Party establishment that doesn't really serve what we need in the 21st century right now. And what a dynamic personality, and just really connected to the communities of the district and the issues of our day. So, yeah, everybody support both candidates. I want to, of course, thank Lily Greenberg Call for being on the town hall as well, introducing Alexis Goldstein. I want to thank Alexis. And of course, I want to thank Robin Wilt. Also, as always, I want to thank the PDA team that's working behind the scenes today. Mike Thaler and Susan Gilbert. Susan may not be with us today, but Donna Smith, who wasn't with us today, Dan O'Neill, and of course, Mike Fox. And a special thanks, by the way, to Mike Hirsch for helping on a number of projects over the past few days with both candidates on the town hall, actually. He has roots, of course, in upstate New York and lives in Maryland. So thank you all, and we'll be back again next week. Another PDA town hall. Don't go away, because we're going to family time. Mike Fox is going to take over the reins, and we're going to organize to get things done in family time. But tune in next week again for another PDA town hall.